A city so powerful, it became a symbol of sin for the entire world. A city so great that even after its destruction, its name survived, not as glory, but as a warning. Was Babylon truly the city of sin? Or was that just a story told by its enemies? And how did the greatest city on earth vanish into dust? To understand Babylon, we must go back thousands of years to a time when the world itself was still young. A time when the land between the rivers, Mesopotamia, became the birthplace of civilization. Here, between the mighty Tigris River and Euphrates River, humans first learned to farm, to build, to write, and to rule. But in the beginning, Babylon was nothing. Just a small, unremarkable settlement, lost among giants. And yet, this insignificant town would one day rise to dominate the entire known world. How? In the early days, the great powers of Mesopotamia were not Babylon, but older, stronger cities like Uruk, Ur, and Eridu. These were the true centers of civilization, filled with temples, trade, and power. Babylon, in comparison, was barely worth mentioning. For centuries, it remained in the shadows, overlooked, insignificant. But history has a pattern. Empires rise, and then they fall. Around the end of the 3rd millennium BCE, the great Akkadian Empire began to collapse. Wars, rebellions, and invasions shattered the old order. Powerful cities turned against each other. Alliances broke. Chaos spread across the land. And in that chaos, opportunity was born. Because when giants fall, even the smallest can rise. And Babylon was about to take its first step toward power. Around 1894 BCE, a man named Sumu-Abum seized control of Babylon. He was not a great emperor, not yet. But he did something far more important. He made Babylon independent. At first, his power was small. His city was surrounded by stronger rivals like Larsa and Isin. One wrong move, and Babylon could have been crushed. So instead of reckless war, he built walls to protect the city, canals to bring water, temples to unite the people. Slowly, quietly, Babylon began to grow. But the real transformation came with a king whose name would echo through history. Hammurabi. When he took the throne, Babylon was still just one among many powers. But that was about to change, because Hammurabi didn't just fight wars, he played the game of power. And then came the moment that would change everything. At the heart of Babylon stood a towering structure, massive, layered, reaching upward toward the sky, a ziggurat. To the Babylonians, it was a sacred bridge between earth and the heavens, but in later traditions, it would become something far more infamous, the Tower of Babel. According to ancient accounts, humanity once spoke a single language. United in purpose, they gathered in the plains of Mesopotamia and began building a city and a tower so adim that it would touch the heavens themselves. But this was no ordinary construction. It was ambition. It was defiance. And according to the biblical narrative, it was a direct challenge to God. So what happened next? Everything changed in an instant. Languages were confused, communication shattered, unity collapsed, and humanity was scattered across the earth. What remained was not just a ruined project, but a warning carved into history. Babylon would carry that legacy forward. A city of Adamt, but also of arrogance, of knowledge, but also of corruption. And as centuries passed, Babylon did not fade. It grew stronger. Under the rule of one man, it would rise to heights the world had never seen before. His name was Nebuchadnezzar II, a ruler of unmatched ambition, a king who would transform Babylon into the greatest city on earth. Massive walls, golden temples, towering gates. Everything about Babylon became larger than life. But with power came pride, and with pride came downfall. Because no empire, no matter how powerful, escapes the laws of time. Under Nebuchadnezzar II, Babylon became a symbol of absolute power. He rebuilt the city from the ground up, turning it into a masterpiece of ancient engineering. Towering walls surrounded it, so thick that chariots could race across the top. At its entrance stood the magnificent Ishtar Gate, covered in deep blue glazed bricks, decorated with lions, bulls, and dragons. Inside the city, everything spoke of wealth. Temples covered in gold, grand palaces stretching for miles, and at the center of it all, the Adim Ziggurat, often linked to the legendary Tower of Babel. Some accounts even speak of the Hanging Gardens, one of the greatest wonders of the ancient world. Babylon wasn't just a city, it was a statement, a declaration that human power had reached its peak. But history has a pattern. The higher a civilization rises, the harder it falls. And fall, it did. After the death of Nebuchadnezzar II, the empire began to crack from within. Weak rulers, political instability, a kingdom once united, now slowly collapsing under its own weight. But the greatest threat was not inside Babylon. It was coming from the east. A new power was rising, relentless, disciplined, unstoppable, led by one man, Cyrus the Great. In 539 BCE, his army reached the walls of Babylon. What happened next shocked the ancient world. There was no massive battle, no long siege. Instead, according to historical accounts, Cyrus used strategy over strength, diverting the Euphrates River and entering the city through its dried riverbed. Babylon, the greatest city on earth, fell in a single night. Just like that, the empire was over. But even in defeat, Babylon did not disappear overnight. Under Cyrus the Great, the city was spared. Temples were respected, traditions were preserved. Babylon remained important, but no longer powerful. It had lost its soul. Centuries passed, and a new conqueror arrived, Alexander the Great. When he entered Babylon in 331 BCE, he was not greeted with resistance, but with submission. He saw its greatness and dreamed of restoring it as the capital of his empire. But fate had other plans. In 323 BCE, Alexander died in Babylon, and with him died the last chance of the city's revival. From that moment on, Babylon began to fade, slowly, quietly. Its Adim temples crumbled, its canals dried, its annas vanished. The city that once ruled the world became nothing more than ruins in the desert. Today, all that remains of Babylon lies buried beneath the sands of Iraq. Broken walls, faded bricks, silent Alad. A city that once defined human civilization, reduced to whispers of the past. But its legacy still lives on. In history, Babylon is remembered as a symbol of power, ambition, and brilliance. In religious traditions, it is remembered as something else, a warning. A reminder of what happens when arrogance replaces humility, when power replaces faith, when humans try to rise beyond their limits. From the Adim Tower of Babel to the scoot of an empire, Babylon's story is not just history, it is a lesson. Because no matter how powerful a civilization becomes, no matter how high it rises, every empire eventually falls. And Babylon was no exception. If you made it this far, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for the next chapter in our journey through ancient civilizations.